Welcome into the latest episode of our Cubs Recap podcast, a presentation of our Recap YouTube channel and available audio only everywhere you get your favorite podcasts. I'm David Kaplan. That's Gordon Wittenmeyer, and our special guest right here in the hot seat is Jesse Rogers of ESPN. Gentlemen, good to see you.
Great to see you. Great to be here. What a setup.
How about that?
This is some professional digs here. I love it.
Look at this. We got two Mount Rushmores.
I love it. Let's talk some Cubs.
Okay, let's talk some baseball. Both of you have been in Arizona. The Cubs are in Japan, and they will be taking on the Dodgers. And then they come back to spring training. And then they have an interesting month of April. But let's start with, what is your observation? Well, they get warm weather teams in cold weather, which you fail to understand is an advantage for my favorite team.
They get juggernauts, dude. It's one of the worst
the
stretches
Rangers
of the
who were under 500 last year. That's a juggernaut.
Okay. You get a 3-game reprieve.
That's a juggernaut.
I actually think Texas is going to be better this year, so be careful.
I would think so too.
Yeah.
Anyway, your observations of the Cubs.
Yeah, I think the easy observation is both the floor and ceiling has been raised, but how much is the question, right? The offense definitely is looking better. I mean, you could use spring stats as an example, but PCA and Amaya seem like they've arrived to a certain point now where they're not looking lost at the plate. So that's a good start. And then you add Kyle Tucker, and all of a sudden, even though he's not having the best spring, things elevate even more. So the floor and ceiling on the offense absolutely has been raised. Don't know how high necessarily just yet. I think a lot of people worry a little bit about that starting rotation. Is it deep enough? Is it top heavy? I'd say the Reds are a little bit more top heavy when you think about Hunter Green at the top.
They're also deeper.
Yeah, and they're probably deeper when everyone's healthy. The Reds haven't always been healthy.
True.
But we're talking about the Cubs. Good rotation. Remains to be seen if it's great. And I've been wondering about this bullpen. I like it. I could love it. I do think there's quantity, but we got to see the quality. So some question marks here and there, but overall, floor and ceiling of the team raised, especially offensively.
Okay, I got to follow up to that because Cap and I were arguing about this last week. So I agree with you. Their floor and ceiling are elevated, but how much has the entire league elevated, and where does that put them relative to the league?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I know that team. I know ownership, front office, like you guys do. They're not worried about the league. They're worried about Milwaukee, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, and St. Louis. And I think we can almost cross off two of those teams. I say that today, and
the Cardinals aren't even trying.
They're not even trying.
They're not even trying. And they're going to unload in July.
Are at $110 million. Got rid of their all-star closer and their all-star shortstop.
Yeah, but they got rid of a Cy Young winner the year before and won 94 games.
And Woodruff is due back. Like, you could still make a case for Milwaukee. You really could. Woodruff is due back. McGill filled in for Devin Williams fine last year.
And they picked up your Buick.
And they picked up
Quintana.
Yes.
One of the worst trades Theo and Jet ever made.
That's right.
But a good signing for the Brewers.
And the offense is sneaky good in Milwaukee. And it might be, again, even without Adames. So Milwaukee, Cincinnati, Chicago, I think most people in the industry believe that. So I go back to they're not close to the Mets or Dodgers or Yankees on paper, but they're definitely closer to Milwaukee than they were a year ago.
What about the Padres? What about the Diamondbacks who added Burns? What about the Giants are better? What about the Braves who are healthier? What about the Phillies?
If I'm the Cubs or a Cub fan, I say I worry about that in October. Now, you do have to beat those teams at some point during the regular season, too, to get to October. Right. But essentially, you're still thinking about Milwaukee and Cincinnati.
So are you saying it's division or bust for the teams in the Central?
Oh, I think you can make that case. I think you can make that case. I mean, not for sure. Like, weird things happen.
Last week when we were on the podcast, Gordon said, we'll know about the Cubs by the end of April.
April 28th, we'll know.
No, you won't.
Yeah, I agree with you.
We'll know how good they are. We'll know whether they're on their way to your 91 wins or not.
I don't think so.
Have you looked at the schedule?
You could be, yes. And yes, they get the Dodgers, Padres, Rangers at home.
Just because
and Dodgers, Padres.
You don't have to kiss it.
No. I sometimes I disagree with them. I'm just saying, look, you could go, I don't know how many games they have, 14-14, March, April. And what does it tell you? Nothing. And they'll probably be around 500 because of some of the things you said. It is a wonky schedule.
2 West Coast trips out of the way. And you got West Coast teams coming here when it's going to look like this. Crap weather.
All right. We'll see. I'm telling you, we're going to know on April 28th.
No, we're not. Here's the question.
No shot.
Do you really think they're going to bury themselves on April 21st or be 10 over 500? No,
I think we're going to know.
Separates themselves in April.
I think we're going to have a sense of how good they are. Plus, we'll see how their health is holding up at that point. And, if they got a winning record at that point and they're relatively healthy and we see how some of these young guys are performing, I mean, it could be a really optimistic moment for that team on the 28th. But I think it's a telltale month, like few others on the schedule.
Well, once in a while, a team does bury themselves in April. I just don't see that happening despite that tough schedule.
So if we look at their rotation, Imanaga, Steele, Tyone, Matthew Boyd, who gets the 5th spot? Ben Brown?
Yeah, I think Ben Brown's going to get that shot. We've seen him start a few games in spring. He's looked good. He's got great stuff. I feel like what I said to you on the radio last week, like, let's test drive Ben Brown. He's healthy. You have the opening there. Let's give him a test drive. Maybe he's suited for the bullpen or needs more seasoning in AAA. Who knows? I don't think so. I like him better than Jordan Wicks' stuff. So I say let's get him out for a test
Wicks, Assad, who's still dealing with a oblique, Ben Brown, Cade Horton. Who else?
There's
Colin Ray,
Brad Keller. They really like
Keller. Chris Flexen's in the minor league camp.
Colin Ray's a good name because we know Council likes him, but I see him as a long man more. But to open the season, could be Colin Ray as the 5 or Ben Brown. Again, it's not like names that pop off the page. If you think about the Dodgers rotation or a couple of the others ones, but it's good. It remains to be seen if it can be great. If Steele could emerge as a true number 1 because he's flirted with that, great. But I'm not sure that he is a true number 1. And Imanaga is not a true number 1.
And the other advantage of the way the schedule opens up, your first 4 games, you get your best 2 starters.
Yeah,
all 4 games. So I mean, there is that advantage.
Okay, defensively, I believe their outfield. I told Gordon last week, their outfield is the best defensive outfield in baseball. You agree?
Yeah, I might have to go through
Tucker,
some.
PCA,
definitely good.
Tell me who's better.
I'll jump to this point. If it take Shaw out of it for the moment, you look at every other position out there. Maybe catcher's a little iffy. That's as good a defense as we're going to see. Now that Bush has arrived defensively, now that Tucker's replaced Suzuki, PCA has arrived, Happ's 2-time Gold Glover, Swanson, Horner are as good as they come.
Good. Milwaukee's a pretty good fielding team with a lot of names that people don't recognize.
100% agree with that. They're neck and neck. They're neck and neck. Those are 2 of the best.
And those are the clear advantages over the Reds that the other 2 teams that are going to be in the running have.
I agree.
Because the Reds are largely terrible.
Okay, they gave up in the deal to get Kyle Tucker. They gave up Cam Smith, who was their number 1 pick a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
He's had a great spring for Houston. There's talk he could break camp with them. I don't think he will, but there's talk.
Right.
Will they regret trading Cam Smith in that deal?
If Tucker is not re-signed, the answer is yes. The answer is yes. And it might not just be because of Cam Smith. Whatever Paredes turns into, whatever Hayden Wesneski turns into, whether they're moved for someone else. Like, there's 3 players with team control to play with there. And if Tucker leaves after 1 year and they don't win a World Series, then yes, they will regret it.
There's also a little Aroldis Chapman involved in this. I mean, if you do what you want to with this guy this year, it really doesn't matter what happens next. Now, that's obviously.
But that's winning the World Series.
Well, right.
Or going deep.
Or
even if you go deep,
And if you're Jed, if you get a contract extension out of it, even if you don't get a Tucker extension done, then it was worth the deal.
Okay, so this morning, Jeff Passan, his guy, who's a great dude, dropped an article where he talked to Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who said, I offered to come back on a 15-year deal for under $600 million. And the Blue Jays rejected it.
That Canadian or U.S.?
Yeah, exactly. Where does Kyle Tucker's money come in if he has a good year?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, I would say the large range is, let's take the large range, 250 to 450. That's the large range, 250 to 450. Tighten that up, it's probably closer between 3 and 4. It's between 3 and 4. Now, it depends on the year he has, too. Don't forget about that. He had an incredible half season last year, Kyle Tucker. Vlad Guerrero plays first and DH. Actually, you know this, takes you down a notch these days. They don't respect first baseman much.
Not at all.
But if you can hit, you can hit.
Yeah.
So
Kyle Tucker's a right fielder.
Right fielder and a pretty good one.
Left-handed.
So let's just say $400 million. And maybe I'm too low if he has some monster year, because Juan Soto has reset the market.
And we're talking, it depends on how many years too. I mean, obviously
All that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So
what does that do to teams that are like, oh, after 26, we're shutting this thing down, we're getting a salary cap?
You know, I had a conversation with several executives about this, and there is a school of thought on this that the teams that are being aggressive and going out and signing these sometimes $700 million guys are going to be in better position as they come out the other end, because even if they reset the rules, they're going to get grandfathered in. So where they've been aggressive and they have these long-term contracts already on the book, they're not going to get penalized for it. They'll write them into the new rules. So though there is an evil genius on some of these deals.
Two things. One, that might be true, except the owner of that team might have buyer's remorse because he's grandfathered in to pay this guy some huge amount, where under the new rules, if he had signed him,
he gets him, and it's just money. It's not a penalty against whatever the cap is. And he's already willing to pay the money. The cap just means he puts more money in his pocket going forward.
I guess so, but
he gets the player.
I guess my point is, though, if let's say there's a cap to years and money you can pay a free agent under the new rules, and your guy is grandfathered in way above whatever what you've done is.
If you regret that, then what you're saying you want is a Roki Sasaki sweepstakes where everybody is on a closer to even playing field.
That's what they're going to be looking for.
But then you don't assure yourself of getting that Juan Soto.
No, I agree.
Or whoever that
But the
is.
other thing is, to your point, though, the Padres kind of did this a couple years ago before Peter Seidler passed away. Zig when everyone's zagging. Like, if everyone's waiting for the lockout or whatever it's going to happen, maybe next offseason you go for it. I don't know if the Cubs would be that aggressive, but maybe some other teams would be.
Let's keep in mind, any shutdown, especially if it's a strike, means you're not paying those guys during that stretch.
Right. No, that's true.
You're pocketing some more money. Well,
how long do you think the game gets shut down for, both of you?
So I'm on
I'm afraid that it could be lengthy.
Yeah. So I'm on a text chain with Passon and our other baseball reporters, and we've asked this question to each other. And my answer to them was 0 or 162.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Either they figure it out because they know mutual destruction is not the way to go, or they're out for a while. And a while, might be a full season.
This is the indication I'm getting from people I'm talking to as well. And I think that there are enough people that don't understand that this is a completely apples to oranges comparison to 30 years ago. We're in a post-COVID world where people learned very recently they could do without a lot of things, including sports. And we're also in, how much do eggs cost nowadays?
A lot.
I mean, inflation, it is at a massive level.
Ticket
prices across the board. And don't forget, we're in a direct-to-consumer market in TV revenues going forward, which means I have to sell you and you and you one at a time to get you to buy in, as opposed to the cable model where I'd get 100% of the cable customers.
Even if you didn't want it. Supporting the 20% that were Cubs fans,
so
for instance.
Your point is the danger is real.
The danger is real for devastation. I had one executive tell me if there was a lengthy, it would be disastrous.
I'm only going to didisagree a little bit. Maybe it took the home run chase in '98. Maybe it's apples to oranges.
That ain't coming back.
I do feel like we act like destruction is on the other side of the road or whatever, and then it comes back and it finds its level. Now maybe it takes longer.
Here's another thing.
But I don't disagree.
It's a
it
hell
is
of a risk to take.
No, you're right. But what if it comes back and the Pirates can compete and the Mariners can compete?
Check out
what if it's a better system?
The front page of the Washington Post a few days ago. They did a deep dive into the entertainment value of sports nowadays because of all the analytics. The analytics have solved sports and created a less entertaining product. And all you got to know in baseball to know that is they're experimenting with this automated balls and strike call thing now, trying to get perfect on the strike zone. And the more you move away from the human element, the less entertaining it is. And look at the NBA. It's right. 3-pointers or slashers.
That came from analytics.
And it absolutely came from analytics. So it's even a different ball game. We had steroids coming into the game, at the time of the last shutdown, which meant that you could at least count on home runs coming back from the strike.
Right.
And what happened? Attendance plummeted until the Cal Ripken stuff started getting closer, and then the Sammy and McGuire.
The only thing I'll say is, again, set aside cheap owners. If they do find a system where 30 teams can somewhat compete, the big markets with the small markets, that's my point. Staying away means a better system.
Now, here's the system
at the end.
This is where I get fired up.
I know
because this isn't about, and it shouldn't be about, owners versus players. They don't have to pay them. None of these individuals have to pay those individual players if they don't want to. This is about taking care of your house. Get your house in order. Don't try to take it out of the player's ass because you guys can't figure it out yourself. There's other leagues that have this figured out in the way they share revenue.
Every one of them also has a salary cap. Everyone.
But they also have true revenue sharing. The NFL probably has the best system with its labor.
They
probably
also don't have local TV.
That's my point. They probably have the best financial system, and we know that because they rule of all the sports in this country, and the players get paid. So the second best is probably baseball because it's a little closer to an actual marketplace.
It is, but the difference is with those leagues, when revenues go up, the amount of money the players go up. That doesn't necessarily, that's no guarantee in baseball. When revenues go, that's because of cheap owners.
Right.
When revenues go up, that doesn't mean the players get paid more. In the other leagues,
that's a clean up your own house question.
But that's the problem. No one's
okay. Well, you can't. The players aren't idiots. They've got good lawyers too. They're not gonna. They're not gonna.
When the owner of the Pirates and the Twins and the Mariners and the Royals says, "I can't compete
with the Dodgers.
I cannot compete." When the White Sox
be clear, the Mariners aren't saying we can't compete. They're saying we choose to compete at a 54% level or whatever.
When the White Sox TV money this year is $35 million and the Dodgers is $338 million, there's something inherently wrong with the sport.
There's also, other than hockey, there's probably more day-to-day parity built into baseball because of the nature of the game and the pitcher on the mound. And there's still only 26 roster spots. The Dodgers have two legitimate big league rotations, but they can only use one at a time.
Granted, but if you look at the numbers over time,
it gives you a better chance. It raises your floor. There's no question.
There was a small market team in the World Series 2 years ago.
And I'm not saying it's
a great. They had a winner in a small market in 10 years since the Royals. Year after year, the high-priced teams make the playoffs.
But let me give you an example.
They do.
The more the Mets spend, the more the Dodgers spend, the more they put into revenue sharing. The more the small market teams get directly into their pocket.
Agreed.
If they're spending it, they're able to compete more because they might not get Soto. They might not get Ohtani. But what Bregman signed it for in Boston, there's a lot of small market teams that could have gone and paid that because their payrolls are sitting at 100 to 120, and the Reds are one of them. The Reds don't have a third baseman, you could argue, in their entire under roster.
They're at 110.
They're at 110. Had they gone out and sweetened the pot and got Bregman in, they could have got him for maybe 40, 50 up front. They wouldn't have anything close to a high payroll, and that guy could put up massive numbers. What do you think the chances are that he would be opting out at the end of a season at Great American Ballpark?
Yeah.
Like 100%,
right?
Unless he gets hurt. And so the point is, they're not doing it. They can do it. So that's not a labor problem. That's an internal ownership system problem.
Where are the revenues coming from for the Minnesota Twins?
I just outlined a big portion of it.
Get $70 million max in TV. That's $260 million less than the team with two rotations.
I know you love the American oligarchy and your billionaire buddies, but this is just simply not the case. This is not the problem with the system. It isn't. They got to fix their own house. Look, if there was a problem with the system, if this was the small market teams' franchise values would not continue to rise. Every franchise in Major League Baseball is worth $1 billion. What do you think the Reds
slowing down? Those valuations.
That's because of TV.
Yeah,
but that's national TV too, by the way.
They pulled them off because they couldn't get the money they wanted. Pulled them.
It is slowing down.
Block.
It is slowing down.
But the values that I'm talking about are the Forbes values that always come in less than the sale price.
Until you sell it, you don't have the freaking cash.
You know how they value these teams? They value them based on revenues and projections. If the potential wasn't there for revenues, if there wasn't really there, the franchise values wouldn't be valued that high.
But the value means shit until you sell it. You cannot tell me
what I'm telling you is
Mariners can compete when one
that's
team gets
when you get the billion
and
yes.
they get 70.
But you're missing my point.
Your point sucks. It's stupid.
You're not even listening. I'm not saying that they're making $1 billion. I'm saying their franchise is worth $1 billion. And the reason is because it's making money and because there are revenue sources. Things are changing. We know the landscape's changing. And because of that, we think there's going to be a lockout, but also it's going to be devastating compared to any lockout in any American sport that we've had.
But you cannot tell me that the fucking Mariners can compete with the Los Angeles Dodgers when they want to go get, we'll take Blake Snell. Oh, Sasaki, we'll take him. Oh, we'll take that guy.
The Seattle Mariners have one of the best starting rotations in the game. They have a pitcher's park. Their run prevention is built in, and they're leveraging it.
What?
And they're not spending the money they have.
And they've been trying to get money off their books because they can't make it.
They can make it. They're choosing not to. And their team president admits it.
This is the ultimate debate in baseball. The Tom Ricketts, we want to break even thing. I'm told that Steve Cohn loses.
You talk about bullshit.
Steve Cohn loses hundreds of millions a year, and he pulls out his wallet and he covers the losses. Tom Ricketts is not willing to do that if, in fact, he's losing money or would be willing to lose money. This is the debate.
He's not losing money. He's spending his profits on the property around the ball club.
Are they making hundreds? I still don't know the answer because they won't open their books. We have the Braves books.
That's the only books we get open.
Yeah, and so I don't think Tom Ricketts went on the radio telling a lie. That I think he believes that. He's now, also maybe it's a map.
It's a lie of omission,
right?
Because what he's not telling you is that he's pouring money into investments around the ballpark that are ultimately going to create more revenues. Sure, but in the meantime, you're sacrificing what you're spending on the field compared to the other big market teams.
Okay, how are the White Sox supposed to compete? Because you seem to think these fucking owners have all this goddamn money. Jerry Reinsdorf
doesn't have money?
No. He does not.
I'm telling you, the debate is whether you're willing to operate at a loss. That's
Jerry does not have the money to compete.
And
that is complete bullshit for you to say that. You are leading people in a direction that is bullshit.
Have you looked at his payroll? His national revenues alone would more than cover his operational expenses.
He is bringing in $35 million a year in TV. That's it.
You're talking about his local abomination of a network that can't get carried on the local cable distributors.
Let me take his side too. Some owners like to spend money to make money. If your team was good, you'd have a local TV deal that's better than $35 million.
He doesn't have one team to put on it.
Money to make money. Signing Ohtani was the best business decision they've ever made.
But they also
it cost them $1 billion
already guaranteed in their TV deal.
And by the way,
ahead of everyone.
Seattle should have been in on Ohtani in a big way. Seattle should have been in on Yamamoto in a big way, because Seattle is a Pacific Rim country market every bit as much as the Dodgers is, and maybe even more so when it comes to being able to draw in that Japanese market with the Ichiro history. They could have made tons of money off one of those.
Supposed to compete.
How have they competed? I mean,
they've done a great job scouting and player
there's
development.
More money than you think in the game. If there wasn't, these players wouldn't be making the money.
They make them in certain markets.
Right. They're not making them in Milwaukee.
Make them in Milwaukee, Pittsburgh, Minnesota. These teams can't do it.
Milwaukee's got what's Yelich's contract? $200 million?
Yeah, they do. Everybody can. Yeah,
the St. Louis Cardinals literally spent nothing.
Right.
And they're trying to move more money off the books.
Right. And that's a 1 year, that's a one-off with them.
Until the Brewers signed Quintana, it was basically zero.
The thing with the Cardinals is they've been classified as a small market club, even though their revenues are much bigger than that. They've been the aberration within the system that tries to help the smaller market teams, because they've always had way more money than they've spent. And they've pretended like they haven't. So this deal right now is just because they realized that where they were with their roster wasn't getting them anywhere. So they've reset, and they were trying to, and And also, let's be honest, because we know the CBA is going to get renegotiated, so they're hedging all their bets. But they've always made more money than they've spent, and they've managed to be very competitive despite that. So, I don't. The Cardinals are they're their own one-off.
Here's back to your original question, though. How far will the owners go this time around? I'm getting mixed messages, but I think it's pretty far. In other words, salary cap.
I think you have more Hawks that are willing to cash in a season.
Yeah, I think that's true.
I believe that.
I think that's true.
I suspect that I don't know how many it is, but yeah, I think there's.
You don't think everybody in the NL West outside of LA wants to see some sort of a system where there's a cap?
Agreed.
So they can compete,
but they're
in their minds at least they can compete.
I think the Central franchises. I think there's a higher percentage of Central franchises in both leagues that are pro shutdown.
In the Central, yeah, I'd have to go owner by owner, but yeah, probably.
I mean, I don't.
Well, look what
even the Padres. Even the Padres, I don't think are. I don't think they'd be pro shutdown. I think they would.
They're pro salary cap.
Of course, they'd love a salary cap.
Once Peter Seidler died, one of their other owners came out and said, "Peter would lose money. We will not lose money."
I get it, but there's too good a thing going there for them to want to shut down. And the Diamondbacks know they can compete, and they've done it. The Giants are a big market club.
These teams will tell you we can.
We're talking about the smallest market.
If the Diamondbacks don't draw $3 million or $2.8, how long will they pay these salaries? That's the thing. Other thing, yes, you can compete. I'm telling what they're saying. But we'll compete for a little bit, and then we're going to go backwards.
But again, once what do they call it? The Cohen tax. When you reach that next level on the luxury tax, and then it's like 100%. It's dollar for dollar.
It's a public trust. I don't care. I'll just keep losing money.
So, but my point is that if there are 4 or 5 teams, and I think there's 4 that are at extreme levels, right? But if there's that many at that level, and they keep ramping it up. Fine. There's 12 playoff spots, and we saw wild cards both go to the World Series 2 years ago. And those teams that are spending that much money are just pouring more money into the revenue sharing pot. So
look, I can.
The Cubs, by the way, put 48 cents of every dollar into revenue sharing.
Look, this is why it's a great conversation. It's a great debate. I do think that I lean towards, look, it does work for the other 3 sports. You have some vision of parity. Players are still getting paid. You can carve out a system.
Such a different sport. I mean,
there's a partnership too when you have a cap league. There's a partnership.
There's also
owners want to see the
there's also
revenues work together.
There's also a history. I mean, even from the time Marvin Miller started running the union in the 60s, all the way up until about a decade ago, the union won every CBA because there were so many abuses built into the previous system that everything the union wanted made sense and an arbitrator agreed with. And you could make these cases. They won. They basically won. Even 81, they basically won when they went out on strike. There were 2 CBAs recently that the owners won because I don't know what the union got fat and happy for a while and made some assumptions. But what we saw was that the luxury tax threshold sometimes went up not at all or by 1% when industry revenues were going up by 8 or 9%.
Yeah.
And so that speaks to what you're talking about with these other leagues with caps where the cap is a 51-49 split,
right? And there's a partnership where and everything goes up together. Yeah.
But this system works if everybody. I mean, it worked for the owners for a decade because of that limitation.
Times have changed.
And maybe it's
right. So,
maybe the owners are taking this system on purpose. I don't disagree with bad owners.
Yes,
I don't, and I wish this system would work. But for whatever reason, it's now tilted.
By the way,
because TV contracts have blown up.
Except for a few rare cases in the league. All these ownership groups, I mean, this would be like if you owned Willis Tower and had your business in Willis Tower. In most cases, their building is paid for. I mean, you talk about the White Sox, it's one of the biggest sweetheart deals, if not the biggest sweetheart deal in all of sports for what they get their stadium for. I mean, the overhead is immediately mitigated by some of these where the public is paying for the ballparks on top of all this. So again, it's an ownership problem. And the reason that they're all up in arms is because they're not making as much money as they were when all the TV money just seemed like free money.
I mean,
there was a golden goose.
The union would say this. It is an ownership problem, and they want us to fix their problem.
Right. And
that's what the union would say.
And here's what'll happen.
There's a point to that.
If you left the system alone, the Sotos and the Otanis would still be making their money. But the market would correct. Largely, the market would correct.
You also have a guy like Anthony Rizzo, who we invited on the podcast, but he's laying low right now. Anthony Rizzo said, I'm not going to go play for what they're offering me.
Yeah, well,
guess what? That's what happens.
Jermaine Dye did the same thing.
Well, it's also right. Some guys don't get off the couch for a certain amount because they've made enough,
and that's fine.
God bless them.
Yeah, I mean that's fine. Jimmy Johnson, similar. And now he came back, but he was one of those guys. I'm not going to coach forever just to coach. I made my money. I'm going to do what I want.
So anyway, I think there's a good chance there'll be a lockout. I don't know if it's going to last a season. I don't think anybody can know for sure. What I want to know over the next
26 season.
After 20, we have 2 years. What I want to know over the next year is what are the Hawks saying? What do they sound like? Do they sound like they're in it for the long haul? They'll say it now, but as we get closer to negotiations, I kind of want to see what it's going to look like.
And I want to hear from more players because a generation ago, definitely 2 generations ago, players were unified. Players were, it was a tight fist unity.
They tried a coup last spring.
Well, it wasn't too long ago that part of the reason they lost some of those CBAs was because, everybody kind of felt like they were making enough money. There's a lot of money that the players are making. The minimum salary is close to $800,000 right now.
I think 2 CBAs ago, they started to go the other way.
Yeah.
When they got like more seats on the bus instead of more money in the paycheck.
That was 2 CBA, and then a CBA ago, not this one, was kind of more or less the same. There wasn't a lot of.
This one was okay though.
This one was
any of the non-monetary stuff. The owners are like, yeah, you can have.
Right, exactly.
Well, the dumb stuff.
You want a hotel room?
You want a chef?
Yeah, we'll get you that.
But what they missed on, the biggest thing they missed on, go back and look at where those luxury tax thresholds were. They hardly moved
incrementally.
They bumped up the first year of the CBAs and then just barely moved. And meanwhile, and by the way, the revenues you knew the revenues were going way up because a lot of TV money was already built in.
Right.
So I do think what's going to happen, and it's something we've completely left out of this. Expansion has been talked about. Expansion is a massive one-time windfall.
Yeah, and that's going to be Manfred's last thing.
Yeah, because when you have
put money in his owner's
you had
pockets.
The Nationals and who's the other one? There were 2 teams that were on the market, couldn't get buyers at their number, and said we're out.
Angels, maybe Angels.
Yeah, Angels. And now you have the Twins saying they may take it off the market.
Right.
So,
but you've got new market places like Nashville,
right? But you got to figure out Tampa and Oakland or Vegas.
Yeah, I don't think expansion's.
But no,
I think expansion is a big deal.
He wants the last thing he does
eventually.
Well,
I think it's tied to this. Don't be surprised if it's tied to this.
He's a horrible commissioner
because they're afraid of the TV losses, big time. And there's enough owners that are afraid of where the highest end salaries are and the payrolls are that this is going to look very, very attractive in the short term. So don't be surprised. You've got Barry Larkin out there or in Orlando being the face of another group that wants to bring an expansion team out there. And so it makes more sense just to move the Rays over there. But
can I go back to what you just said?
And then we got to roll.
Because it's easy to bag on Manfred for a lot of reasons. Not the best public relations guy. But let me tell you something. Adam Silver, who everyone loves, could take a page out of Manfred's book. This sport needed those rule changes. I'm sorry. 4-hour boring games, not in 2025. That wasn't going to fly. With the way
he did empower Theo to do it,
and he did it. And the game
Theo
is better.
broke the game. He ought to fix it.
And the game's better. Adam Silver could take a page because it's 3-point boring basketball. So you could say what you want about Manfred, but he put his foot down. Even if you don't like the rule changes, he put his legacy on the line.
Well, the pace of play, pace of play was needed. And what a breath of fresh air.
Manfred man on second, that's little stuff. But he recognized the problem. So I give him credit for that. That'll be his legacy. More than
It
likely.
better not be this ABS crap, because they shouldn't go anywhere near that.
Jesse, thanks for coming
You
in.
got it. This is fun.
Gordon, it was good
All
that
right,
you were
man.
sitting on the left side of the set today. Have
Goddamn right.
Yeah.
Take that.
Yeah, good luck. How'd that work out for you? Have a great rest of your day. I heard your son
I'll bring
recently
you a
got
red
married.
hat next time I come in.
God bless.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate
Gordon,
it.
good to see you. That is another edition of our Cubs Recap podcast.
Take
A
that.
presentation of our Recap YouTube channel and available audio only everywhere you get your favorite podcast. For my partner, Gordon Wittenmeyer, Jesse Rogers, I'm Cap. Take that.